Tennessee River was inhabitable. We had Indians here, and after 1812, when we had the big Reelfoot Lake earthquake, and the Reelfoot Indians were in that area, and the Indians that were in this area moved quickly. And in 1818, West Tennessee started, became an area that could be inhabitable. But this one was one that talked about G.W. Marr, who was a person in here before Dyer County became a county, and he was an assignee of John Baker. And an assignee, I'll talk about later, is a person that John Baker had gotten this land. Mostly they got the land because of war service, and they didn't have the money to pay for the soldiers, so they gave them land in a new territory. As was mentioned, Tennessee mandated county court records to be permanently kept and preserved in 1994. And unfortunately, Danny was talking about all those books that were on the floor, on a broken up floor that had some dirt showing, in a dank area and poor lighting. These books had been originally, I understand, had been in the old health department and had been moved by the trustees to Diane Moore's basement because they didn't know what to do with them. The beginning of the Dyer County Archives was in February of 2013. This was in 2012 that Danny was talking about. They found these books. And I was elected archivist in February. We opened our doors to the public in August 15th, 2013, and in the basement under the election office at 105 West Market. And we stayed there 5 years with only one door that we could go out. There was another door up into Anita's office, but sometimes it was locked, and so we only had one, and there were no windows in there, and in this dark basement. We're a county branch of the Tennessee State Library and Archives out of Nashville, and all county or city archives are branches of the Tennessee State Library and Archives. My husband and I took this training. It was called Archives Training Institute. We had to go 3 years for 2.5 days each. And in 2017, we were the only husband and wife to receive these certificates. And Danny has received his as well. These are a copy of our certificates. We're very proud of them, because it told us how to take care of these records. It must be controlled temperature-wise, and it must be protected from light. If you will take a piece of paper, just an ordinary piece of typing paper, and leave it in the sunlight for a long time, it will turn yellow. And we were taught how to take care of these, to wear white gloves when we're touching these old documents, that we don't leave the oils from our skin. Our mission is, an archives is a repository of public records, and we encourage the public to research our court books and the loose papers. Everything in our archives is public knowledge, except a few things. Adoption papers have to be protected. You have to have a court order to see them. Soldiers' discharge papers, because they have Social Security numbers on them, and anything to do with health care. If you are committed to a mental institution, or if you have some issue that where you have to have conservator, those papers have to be protected. I have to put them in a special place. And you have to have a court order to see them. This is a picture of where the archives is now. It's at 117 West Market. This was taken last Christmas. And on the top of your paper, I have put the address and the telephone number. We have a voicemail that you can leave your message and a phone number, and I will return your phone call. Our hours are Monday through Friday. On the door it says Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, but we're there now each day, each weekday, except if the courthouse is closed, we're closed. On December the 19th, December the 12th, 2018, the Chamber of Commerce honored us with a ribbon cutting ceremony, and some of you attended that. This is our reception area, and when you come into the archives, you will be asked for your name, address, telephone number, and email address, and the surname that you are researching. And we never sell anything. If we find something after you leave, we will call you or send you a text or an email that we found something that would be important to your research. Questions that we would ask you, the surnames that you're researching, and what was the earliest date that you thought your ancestor was in Dyer County. That kind of narrows down. You don't want to look at 1950s books if your ancestor was here in the 1800s. So we try to narrow it down. Were the people married here, and approximately when? We have marriage books, and we can look through those. I've scanned some of them, but it's better to look on a computer screen than it is to lift those 25, 30-pound books. Did they own land? We have scanned all of the deed books. Danny Fultz scanned all the ones that he could take apart, and I've scanned all of the ones that are bound books. And those are complete, and you can look for your ancestor in the deed books. Did they die here, and when? Did they have a will, or did they have an intestate file? And I will discuss both of those a little bit later. We're here to help you. And if we don't have the records that you need, the archives goes up to about 1960s and possibly 1970, but then the rest of them are in the courthouse or in the appropriate department. But if we don't have that record that you need, we will suggest where you need to go. These are, we have 36 filing cabinets, and on the left-hand side, I'll show you a picture of the heavy-duty shelving units that we have. Okay, what's in those filing cabinets? They are original wills. We have about 800 original wills, and we have about 900 of the intestate files. We don't have them all. That's all that that the various departments have given us, and we have taken those. They were originally trifolds. We have spread them out and put them in an archival folder and labeled them. There are about 12,000 original documents and 135 rolls of microfilm of the county court files from 1860 to 1930. There are probate court files from 1920 to 1940. There are chancery court files of 1950 to 1970s. The 135 rolls of microfilm were of these 12,000 original ones, but there was no index. So my husband and I and 3 other volunteers made 3x5 cards of each one of these documents, and they're being typed now. This was in 2013 and 2014, but 12,000 of them. We've completed the 3x5 cards, but it's not typed into an Excel spreadsheet yet. We also have some of the law and equity court files, and law and equity is part of Chancery. Unfortunately, in the 50s and 60s, the name was changed from Chancery to law and equity, and nobody seems to be able to tell me why they were law and equity, but there was a period of time that they were law and equity, and now they're back to Chancery. This is my husband, Vernon, and he's scanning original wills and intestate files so that they're on a computer screen rather than touch all these files. They're filed by surname, so if you come in and you say, I'm searching John Doe, we'll look and see if they have that original will. Wills are important because there's an original signature on that file and two witnesses. And an intestate file, an administrator, when the person died, maybe he didn't write a will, or maybe the family could not find the original will, and or the executor or executress. There's a difference. The man is an executor, and the executress is the woman. Maybe they're deceased before the person had died, and an administrator has to be appointed if the man owned land, or if he had a house or some kind of estate money to distribute to his children, descendants. These are Woodward files, and they contain the trifold loose paper court files. And in that, we have circuit, we have law and equity, more law and equity court trifolds. And when the two buildings were, the roof was taken off in 17, off of Diane Moore's office, and what was to be the archives building, we lost both of our roofs. And in Diane Moore's closet, she found 16 boxes of marriage bonds that from 1975 to 1995, secure in boxes, and they didn't have any water on them. We had to wade water to get to them, but they were up on a shelf and they were protected. And marriage bonds were signed by the minister if you were married in Dyer County, and they were signed by the minister and returned to Nashville to be recorded, and then they were sent back to the appropriate county. And I have 16 files of those. So if you were married between 1975 and 1995, you could probably find your marriage license. Danny talked about the Book I-4 large bed scanner, and I have scanned over 450 of our bound books today, from 2013 until I scanned them today. And here is a copy of the Book I-4, and we're going to get a Book I-5 in July. So we will be running two large book scanners. You think 450 books is a lot of books, and it is a lot of books because it takes me, some of these books that are 650 to 700 pages, it might take me 2 weeks to scan it and run a report. But these are all one of a kind. So if we had a fire, if we had a tornado, anything, and they were destroyed, that destroys all of our history during those particular times. These are heavy-duty storage racks, and there are 14 of them, and that's on the left-hand side of the archives. To date, we've scanned all of the deed books from 1824, and you can see the story is during the fire,
the recorder of deeds, it was wartime, and he took all of his deed books home each night. He took them somewhere. And when the courthouse burned from 1824, he essentially saved all the deed books. There's an entry book, number 1 from 1820. I showed you a picture of it. And there's survey books, and there's different entry books are different from the survey books, because entry books are land plots that were issued by West Tennessee Land Company. Survey books indicate that Henry Rutherford was one of the first surveyors, and there were others, but the survey books from 1821 say a surveyor came in and surveyed 5,000 acres, and he would draw a picture of that 5,000 acres. And both of these were before Dyer County became a county. I've scanned the will books A to F, and that was from 1850s to 1974. And there were people who wrote wills, I'm sure, before 1850, but they probably perished in the courthouse fire. I've scanned some marriage books from 1860 to 1940s are in the archives, and after 1947, they're in Diane Moore's office, because she uses them when people, you have to prove on your Social Security, when you draw Social Security, you need your marriage license, and etc. So she's keeping from 1947 to current in her office. And if you come and you need a record, I will take you down there and help you find whatever you need. I have scanned some of the county court minute books from 1848 to 1891, and I've scanned some of the chancery minute books from 1866 to 1878, and I scan every day that I'm here. And I was working 3 days a week, 3.5 hours a day, and now I'm there almost every day. But I do take a day off every once in a while. These are some of the other available books that we have not scanned, and those are on your paper that I handed out. I put each one of them on your paper. We have Chancery rule docket. Now, rule docket is different from a minute book. The minute book is the county clerk actually took minutes when a court case was happening. And in that, it might be, in Chancery, it might be an estate settlement, or there are a few wills that are recorded there. And they have a more exclusive index. There's a circuit minute book from 1863 to 1945. Probate minutes from 1927 to 1948. The probate rule docket, here again, the rule docket is simply a cross-reference that a court proceeding happened on a certain day and refers back to a minute book number and a page number. So it's kind of a cross-reference, a rule docket is. I have some guardian settlements from 1870 to 1920. County deed trust from 1872 to 1899, and I found some county court minute books, and that's really interesting. And Barbara, I think, came to research, and she had never found her ancestor in any of our books. And I said, why don't you look through this minute book, this county minute book, and she had to go page by page. But I think it was about 70 pages. But she says, I found my ancestor. And that's an exciting time when you find something. And in those county court minute books, they will be establishing county roads. And it will list who lived along that road and who was the superintendent that built the road. And we've also found where there was the appointments of sheriffs and deputy sheriffs. And it's a group indexing, but it's really hard to find an individual name. And now she's back helping me, and she's going through the first minute book, and she's photocopying the pages where these roads are being constructed, and I'm gonna put those into a booklet, and it might help you find your ancestor living on a certain road. I've written 14 grants, and I've received 13 of them. And that from 2013 to 2020, and I've gotten over $54,000 for the county. And this was the picture that was made in 2018 when Secretary of State Trey Hargett presented us with, it's cardboard, but we got the money in the account. And this was, and I've identified who were the pictures. State Secretary Ed Jackson and State Representative Rusty Grills have been very instrumental, and Secretary of State Hargett have been so helpful to taking care of Dyer County. As many of you know, and maybe you don't know, Secretary Hargett was born in Dyersburg at Baird Brewer, I'll say it in a moment, hospital. And so he has a heart for us, because we were in a bad basement with little lighting and stacks of records that had been not been taken care of. And in 2020, our group has grown a little bit. The man on the far left is Mike Pennington, and Mr. Pennington has been so helpful to us. Whenever we get supplies in off of trucks, he is always right there to help us get. He has he can unload. He has a lift that can pull all these heavy steel racks and everything off of the trucks for us. And the next man and woman were representatives from Congressman Kustoff's office. That particular night, Mr. Kustoff was in an airplane going back to Washington, D.C. to sign a bill the next day, and he could not attend, but he sent two of his representatives, Mayor Young and State Secretary Ed Jackson, Senator Ed Jackson, and Vernon and I, and we had an employee named Kelly. Unfortunately, she worked for us 2 years, and she had to have surgery, and she could not come back to be with us. State Representative Rusty Grills, and Secretary of State Hargett in December of 2020. And as you notice, we had to wear masks because that was during the COVID time, and Secretary Hargett says we all have to have masks on for us to come, so that's what we did. What have I done with the grant money? Well, I've purchased those 14 6-tier heavy-duty shelving units that I showed you. I have gotten about 600 storage boxes, and I think there was about 8,000 file folders, the archival file folders. A HEPA filter vacuum. It was very expensive, but for those of us that were doing scanning, we were constantly getting sinus infections, and we realized, hey, we're breathing in, we have our nose down in there scanning and holding it correctly, and we need to remove those mold spores before we breathe them in. So I got a HEPA filter vacuum for that. We archival supplies, tapes, and etc. And the 2020 CARES Act from the federal government, which Congressman Kustoff was instrumental in getting for us. We were able to get masks and Clorox and wipes and et cetera to combat all the germs and viruses. Our volunteers, and we had 5 for the first 2 or 3 years, and now we have 5 or 6. And we're typing indexes, we're scanning, we're creating the file folders for our loose papers, trifolds. We're scanning original wills and Chancery Court files right now. Okay, and that pretty much goes through the archives. I was creating a research paper on Elias Dement when all of this began in 2012. And I have found since then that censuses are very important. I didn't realize how important they were. But the 1850 census, it records all the people in the household, as Nancy talked about last month. And you need to record all the spellings, because they spell phonetically back when they first started doing the census records. And sometimes you might find some vowels left out of a word. And it doesn't even look like your people, but it might be, and I encourage you to write that down, because the next time you go back to look at the census records, I wish I'd have written that down, because it might prove that it's a brother or an uncle, and the enumerator didn't know how to spell, so it might have been spelled incorrectly. The 1910 and the 1900 census gives the woman how many living children she's had and how many are deceased. And that's important, because maybe a child was born in 1899 and maybe died before the census in 1900. And you've been told that there was another child, but that proves in 1900 and 1910 that she's had another child and it's deceased. I know that there is I believe it was the 1860 or 1870 census in Dyer County, and they recorded only initials. And everybody's complaining about that. But as you go further in your research, sometimes the middle name or the middle initial is not known, and you can go back to the Dyer County, whatever that census was that they used all initials. Hey, he had another initial in there, and maybe he was known by Jim, and his name was Charlie James, and you can that's another clue for you. Record all the neighbors that are around you. The page before and the page afterwards, because many times that's the married daughters that are living next to you. And I didn't realize how important census records and deeds were. You need to search for the deeds of the neighbors as well, because in the description of your land, sometimes it will say James, Charles James or Charles J, whatever the surname might be, owns the property, and the corners meet on the left-hand side. And sometimes you can find out that middle initial or middle name of the neighbor. I was searching the name Dement, and I referred back to Mr. Hume's Dyer County, History of Dyer County. It was copyrighted in 1982, and I believe the Historical Society now has some of those books. Mm-hmm. But on page 49, I was looking for Elias Dement, the man who had the first dirt floor house. And on page 49, it says, Dyersburg was surveyed and laid off into town lots in 1825. In early 1826, William DeMint opened a whiskey and tobacco store in a small log house which stood on the bank of the river on the present site of the flouring mill. Well, that didn't mean anything to me either. I didn't know who William DeMint was. Well, down another paragraph, it says William DeMint's father kept a tavern at the same time and place. That just says that William DeMint had a father. And later on on that page, in late 1826, Alexander Russell opened a general merchandise store in a log house on the south side of the public square, which is the courthouse area. Then on page 60 and 61 of that same book, the first house was erected by Elias DeMint and had only a dirt floor. Okay, Alexander Russell opened the first general merchandise store in 1826 on the south side of the square. So I have more information. And sometimes you have to be this detective and just get little snippets here and there and piece them together. On page 221 of that same book, it's volume 1, Thelka Smith wrote her thoughts. Mr. Hume's book is not indexed, so you have to read the whole book to look for a clue. The story starts out with a gentleman with a dirt floor. Elias DeMint was this man, having floated down the Forked River in 1820 and built a rude log cabin upon a hill overlooking the river. This was Dyersburg's first home. Okay, that gave us some more other information. Elias DeMint was the man with a dirt floor, a rude log cabin with a dirt floor. Then later it says Thelma. Well, I questioned that because I had found Elias DeMint's family in August of 1820 on the Gallatin County, Kentucky census. I think she may have been, this was a good account, but I think she might have been off by a year because I can't imagine a family leaving Gallatin County, Kentucky, which is the tip end of the state of Kentucky, on the Ohio River, floating down the Ohio River into the Mississippi River and getting into the Forked and floating into Dyersburg after August. It doesn't make sense. And if he came by land, if he walked that area, it would have been, by the time he could walk from Gallatin County, Kentucky into Dyer County in the winter months, I just don't think he had time to get here and cut the timber and make a lean-to for his family before it got really bad weather. So I think she might have been off maybe a year, but we'll see. And then on page 225, the court of the new town was moved from John Warren's house, and we have a log in the museum of John Warren's house. And in 1826 the court was held in a log house which stood where Miss Monroe's mill now stands. Okay, where was Miss Monroe's mill? It was a flour mill. I located a Dyer County Deed Book B, page 240 and 241, and I transcribed that. I gave you a picture of it, page 240, but I transcribed that for you. Town Commissioners, deed to town, deed for town lot number 21, and I had Danny bring this, and you can look at it closely. But this is this is lot number 21, and it's where it's a vacant lot right now where the Tennessee Hotel once burned. And it's off of South Main, and before you go across the railroad tracks. says, this indenture made and entered to this 8th day of August, 1829, between Jesse Simmons, Benjamin Porter, William Terrell, Griffin Rutherford, and Thomas Nash. They were the town commissioners for the town of Dyersburg. And if you will look on this form, let's see. Dyersburg has an H at the end. That's where you've heard that it was McIver's Bluff first, and then it was named Dyersburg with an H, and it ended in an H. And that's proof that we found it spelled that way for a while. And in 1850, it was later they dropped the H. But anyway, in the county of Dyer and state of Tennessee on the one part, and Alexander Russell, a signee of Elias DeMint. That's the only land that I have ever found that belonged to Elias DeMint. And I've looked through the entry books, I've looked through the survey books, I've looked through Dyer County Deed Book A, and I can't find a where he bought that or was given that. And it says it was in the county and state aforesaid, and there was some more on page 240 and 241. But it told me that Elias DeMint and Alexander Russell were pretty close together until I found them in the 1830 census. And it was on page 11 of 18. And I recorded the people that were living around them. And if you can see that Alexander Russell house was separated by Z.B. Phillips, and Elias DeMint was in the next house. Elias DeMint left Dyer County in either 1830 or 1831. And he went to Whitesides County, Illinois, and he died in Powsack County, Iowa in 1847. But had I not found this Dyer County census and the clues in Mr. Hume's book, I never would have found these important clues. And that's the reason that it's important for us to search neighbors in deeds and in census records. And I hope this helps you in your research. And you're welcome to come to the archives any afternoon. It's better in small groups. We can handle 3 or 4 researching at the same time, but not 20, because we only have 12 chairs. So that's one thing. And I can give you personal you don't have to make an appointment. You can just drop by and tell me the names that you're searching, and if I can help you, I'm there to help. If I don't have the records, I will refer you to the courthouse and tell you which department to go to. I refer people to the paper. They have an archives at the State Gazette. I refer you to research the Tennessee State Library and Archives, because they make a copy of all of the newspapers that are published in the state, and then they throw them away, but they're on microfilm for you to look at. I refer you to adjoining counties. I've had people call me and say, I know that my ancestor was in Dyer County, and I can't find their ancestors. And I said, would you possibly you might look in Gibson County, because they have a Dyer, a city, a little town in Rutherford, in Gibson County. Oh, I've had some people say, no, I'm right, and so I said, well, I'm sorry, but they're not here. And the man called me back the next day and he said, I went to Gibson County and they were in Dyer. And that is a problem, because when people are writing, especially I found it on Ancestry, they'll say Dyer, Tennessee. Okay, is that Dyer County or is that Dyer, Gibson County? And they tended to name communities in different counties. There are two frog jumps. There's one in Crockett County and there's one in Gibson County. And that's confusing. And you know, I just refer you, if I can't help you, I refer you to somebody else. And I thank you for listening.
Are you gonna take questions?
If you have questions.
Of course I do.